My name is Claire Patton, and I'm here with Mrs. Lois Vostral. This is the December 7th, 2020, and we're meeting via Zoom. How are you today?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah. All right. So where were you born?
I was born in Liberal, Kansas, but I'm from Hooker. I was the only one of I have a brother and sister, older, and I was the only one born in a hospital. But it wasn't really a hospital. It was a nurse's home that she sort of made over. And my mother's, at 7 months during our pregnancy, she started bleeding. And so they admitted her to this little hospital. And so that's where I was born in Liberal, Kansas. My brother and sister were both born at home. So
really?
I was very special. Yeah, but I was premature, which is interesting.
Yeah.
At 7 months. And back then, they gave premature babies a high dose of oxygen, and many of them became blind.
Really?
But good old Hooker, Oklahoma, and Liberal, Kansas didn't know about those things. So I didn't have to deal with that problem. I'm sure I went home with mother that first day, Yeah. Okay, now the rest of the story is I've seen all kinds of pictures. I have one on my wall. June the 4th, 1937, and this huge dust storm is rolling in. And I said to my parents, well, was there a dust storm when I was born? And they couldn't remember. I know. And I think it's because dust storms did not define them. They dealt with it and moved on, And I read horrible stories about how people back in those days would boil tumbleweeds and feed their cattle. We never did that. Somehow my parents managed. We had a huge problem, and it maybe was when I was, I don't know, 4 or 5, because I remember it. And we had a huge blizzard. And so after it was over, Daddy goes out to see how all the, cattle and pigs and chickens and all that were. And all the pigs had gotten in one little building and smothered because I know they were trying to keep warm. So they were all dead. Now that was huge for my parents because that was part of their income. The other income we had is we milked, and we separated the milk from the cream and put the cream in cream cans and took it into Hooker to the railroad station, and they would pick it up. And I think it went into Beatrice, Nebraska. And then from there, mother would get a check, and that's how we got by. Yeah. So that cream was very important. But during the war, World War II, not the Civil War. Okay. We had ration stamps. And I remember going with mother to Liberal, Kansas, where the grocery store was. And there was a Air Force base there. And one of the ladies, I'm sure the wife of one of the guys, and she was checking out and didn't have enough ration stamps and would be crying. And mother would just whip out some and give her because, we had our own meat, we had our own eggs, we had our own vegetables. So I guess we were buying flour. You couldn't buy sugar. So, but yeah, I remember that vividly. Yeah. I don't remember those rolling dust storms. I guess I'm too young. Well, yeah.
What year were you born?
I was born in 1937.
Okay.
So they were there, but, I was probably too young. And by the time I got older, well, even in the 50s, we had some dust storms, but they weren't those big rolling ones where, it blacked out all kinds of, it was horrible, so we didn't have those. So I remember I remember a lot of dirt, and mother talked about putting wet sheets around the windows and places and doors to keep the dust out, you know. The thing that I do today that I know was part of the dust was I always put my glasses in the cabinet upside down, and that was to keep the dust out.
Yeah.
I bet you don't put them in upside down. No, see?
I do, but I grew up in a little trailer house and we had lots of mice. And so when I was little and putting away dishes, I had to do that.
So for a different reason, but yeah, it worked. Yeah, and they must have turned the plates upside down too, which I don't do. But I bet they did. You know? Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that we had that was because of the drought, and it was so dry, we would have millers. Oh my gosh, horrible millers.
Like,
do you know what I'm talking about? The moths? Yeah. And we would all get, my sister and my brother and myself and mother. And if Daddy were around, he would do it too. And we'd take these towels and shoo all the millers out the door. It was horrible. They were so sticky and ugly. Anyway.
Yeah. How did they get in the house? They just...
They were there. Flies, you know, I guess probably it was a rental house. Mm-hmm. So probably, you know, it wasn't as tight. When I was in the 3rd grade, my parents bought my grandparents' homestead place. And so then we had a bigger house and I had my own bedroom. It was much tighter and a better house. So that was nice. Yeah.
Yeah. What are some more stories that you remember your parents or siblings telling you about the Depression?
You know, they didn't dump it on us. I never felt like we were poor. Isn't that interesting? And we were. Oh my gosh. We had to have been, you know, but they never let us worry about it. I'm sure they worried about it.
Yeah.
When we moved, we started pasteurizing milk because my brother kept getting strep throat. Mm-hmm. And so if they pasteurized the milk, then he didn't get it. So that was interesting. I didn't like milk, though. Of course, you know, since we had it, of course, I didn't like it. Mother always goes, why? You know, I would go into town and would eat out and I would order milk. And just, why did you do that? Well, our milk had cream that was on top, and I called it scabs. I didn't like it because it would stick in my mouth.
Yeah. Was your family... Go ahead.
No, you ask the question. It's fine.
Was your family... Do you think that it helped them survive that they were on a farm?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, again, you know, we were feeding, or Daddy was making sure we fed cows, and I learned to milk a cow when I was 6. Oh my gosh. And I'm sure they gave me the easiest cow to milk, you know, but we all were involved and none of us got away with not working, you know. We had chickens and we had pigs, you know, and then later we had peacocks and banty roosters and all kinds of things around the farm. So, you know, Daddy and Mother managed somehow so that even though, of course, I guess most of the dust storms were about over by the time I remember, but they never let it define them, I guess, which made a difference. Yeah. The other thing that we did when I was in school, and this went all the way through, every year my father would butcher hogs. Mm-hmm. And then we didn't have electricity at first. And so we had what did they call it? They called it the plant or something like that, where there were cold, it was a freezing cold area. and we had drawers to put all of our meat in. And that was town, okay, because we didn't have electricity to have a freezer or anything like that. But anyway, Bill, my brother, was always going to be a doctor, and I was always going to be a nurse. So those were when they butcher would be the days that we could play hooky legally. I mean, you know, from my parents' point of view. And we would go around checking all the insides of the guts and everything of all these animals. And we would find fetuses and we would find broken bones. And it was just wonderful. We had a great day. The other thing that was very interesting is Daddy was very careful in the way he would kill a hog. Okay. And so one time I said, could I watch him? And he said, yes, but you have to be very, very quiet. Okay. So he was down out there by the pig pen on the ground with his gun, and he's stretched out on his stomach, waiting. And when it was just right, he would pull the trigger and the pig would just immediately fall over. I mean, he would hit them right there. And so they never experienced, you know, pain or anything. And we had neighbors who would just kind of shoot at him, and we could hear them squealing a mile and a half away. It was awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, Daddy was very careful. Yeah. And the other thing we did, we butchered chickens every summer.
Yeah.
And so we would raise the little ones. Did you grow up on a farm?
I had a bunch of animals, but I didn't grow up on a farm.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we would get chickens, baby chicks, you know, and then they would grow, and then we would separate them. And Daddy would call them. We would go out at night and get them while they were sleeping and bring them to him, and he had put a pill down their throat. And I'm not sure what that was about. And anyway, the hens then would go in the hen house, and then the others would stay in the brooder house, as we called it. We had all kinds of outbuildings. And then we would, Mother would step on their heads and pull their head off, and that's how they would be killed. Some people would hang them on the clotheslines and cut off their heads. They did all kinds of things, but that's the way we did it. So
and they were knocked out, right?
Yeah. And so then we would clean, you know, put them in boiling water to get the feathers off, and then we would cut them up. And then those again would go to town to be put in the freezer until REA came through with, you know, that was Rural Electric Association, right? So then we had electricity. So then we bought a freezer, and that helped things. But yeah.
It sounded like your dad
kept us busy, you know?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Although my sister, who was a year and a half older, I was the youngest, my brother was the oldest. She had a coarctation of the aorta, which is the aorta is the largest vessel that goes off the heart, right? And it was strictured, you know. And so as she grew, it stayed the same size. So then she wasn't getting enough blood below that spot and too much pressure above. And so she often used her disability not to get out of work. And that's for sure.
That's funny.
And so sometimes she would be gone with the horses or doing whatever she wanted, and I'd be working hard, and my brother would be too. It's funny.
Yeah.
But we were a sick family in that, you know, because they diagnosed her. I guess, you know, they knew something was wrong by the first grade, and they finally did surgery on her when she was in the 7th grade.
Yeah.
So that was a long time. And we all looked out for Peggy, and it was okay, you know.
Yeah.
But looking back, you know, she she played it well.
Yeah. You said you were a sick family. Was that like the name for people who had?
No, that's the nurse and me talking.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if that was just a term or something.
No. But looking back, I can see, we all were concerned about Peggy, and no one ever told me, but I knew she could die.
Yeah.
And so that was frightening, and so we all gave up to Peggy.
Yeah.
And she was teasing me one time in our adult years about being the baby and being pampered and all that. And I go, wait a minute. You took that away from me, Peggy. You were the one. I was the one doing your work. You were out there enjoying your illness. She didn't enjoy it. It was hard for her. And
Yeah.
When they operated on her at Mayo's, it was, I think, only the second operation of its kind in the United States.
Wow.
And the only reason they found it was the only reason they could do surgery was because of shrapnel in World War II, and it would get into the lungs. And so then the doctors then realized what they could do with the lung. Before that, they never would go in the lung,
Yeah.
And so because of that, then they could save her. But she has a huge scar that goes all the way back here and all around. They took out a rib, and they wouldn't have to do that today. Oh, I bet you can hear my dog barking.
Yeah, that's okay.
Well, he's outdoors, but he's not in the house. But I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Oh gosh. Well,
Yeah.
Toby's in this for perpetual, forever, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
To get a Kleenex.
Okay. So I was always going to be a nurse, and Bill was always going to be a doctor. And that's the way we went through life. And that's what we did, which is interesting. But I have to go on and tell you about some of the high school experiences, and then I'll go on to college, because I know we organized sports only occurred for young women.
Really?
In Oklahoma and Iowa.
Uh-huh.
So we played A-team girls basketball first, and then the boys played A-team basketball, and we would travel together. And we actually played organized sports, and they had a state championship for basketball for girls in Oklahoma back in the 30s and 40s and 50s, before Title IX, which is amazing. Now I have to go on and say, when I was in college, I decided, I was a good basketball player. Oh, God bless you. I can play, in these intramural sports. And this girl was just standing there with a ball in her hand, and I knocked it out of her hand, and it was a foul. And I go, what? I don't know what rules they had, but they were different. So, okay, so we played half court.
Uh-huh.
So the three forwards would be on one end and three guards would be on the other end.
Yeah.
And then we would have the opposing team have three guards who were guarding us, because I was a forward.
Yeah.
And I always tell the story, I made 43 points in one game. Belt, Oklahoma, which is way out in western Oklahoma on the other side of Boise City. It's forever.
Yeah.
And so I told Mother later, because we would leave our cabin in Colorado and drive through Felt getting to Hooker. Uh-huh. And I said, they put up a big statue, Mother, and it said, Lois June Motter made 43 points in one game. And she said, really? And Felt no longer, the town is still there. I don't know, 3 or 4 houses, but the school is all, it's gone. They probably go into Boise City, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, so that was the highlight of my career. And I probably would have been given a scholarship if Title IX would have occurred sooner, but it didn't. So, yeah, so I'm a big women's rights issueist. So I'll probably hit that strong. I feel very strongly about it. Anyway.
Yeah, I remember when I was talking to Mrs. McDonald, and she was saying, like, in a different world, she could have been a lawyer, or did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, they only allowed 2 women in every med school class at OU. Out of 100 students, they would have 2 women. So those 2 women were the smartest, best grades in the state. And there was no way that I could compete at that level. Oh, first, and so I even said to my brother, why aren't there more women? And he said, well, it's because, you know, they have children and they stay home and all that bit, which now we wouldn't allow, you know. But that's what they said back then.
Yeah.
So anyway, I have to go to Dr. Wilhelm, then I'll get into college. So we were in 4-H, okay. And I'd always had a steer. And what do they call it? And they were Herefords. And Daddy had Herefords, and he would pick out a good calf, and we would take that. Okay. And so Dr. Wilhelm, who was the president of Oklahoma State, I looked it up from, where did I see that? 52 to 66.
Yeah.
And evidently he never forgot a name. He just had that reputation. Okay. So he had been out at Guyman at the fair, the Fat Stock Show, judging for years. And so here he is. Now this must have been 53. So he was already the president of a college, and I had no idea. I knew he was a very nice, kind man, but that's all I knew. So anyway, my sister was a senior and I was a junior, and we had 3 Chester White pigs, again from Daddy, and this 1 steer. And we had both worked with the steer, helping him learn to lead and all that stuff with it, the harness and all that bit. But we'd not done anything on a 1-to-1 with the pigs because they were a pen of 3. And supposedly you just put them in the pen and they'd be judged. And that's all we had to do. So we were getting ready to go down to the fair, and we drew straws to see who got the calf. And my sister got it. Okay. So now I have these 3 pigs, which, and I had not ever taken care of. I mean, we fed them, but that was it. Okay. So we get down there. Well, there were a lot of kids there and FFA guys who helped me bathe these 3 pigs. And you have to, they're all white. You bathe them, soak them down, and then you bleach them. And then you had to powder them with white talcum, and backcomb their tails. And okay. So we got them all clean and got them in their pen, and I'm fine. Okay, I can keep that pen clean. Well, someone came along and said, that pig is really, really good. You should show him. And I didn't even know which one that was. And so it came to the time to show. And here comes this person. They said, it's that pig. Okay, so we got that pig out of the pen, and there was a long corridor going down to the arena where we were showing. Now, keep in mind, I had not worked with him at all. So he runs down and he goes straight to this other pig and literally shredded his ear. I mean, it was apart and it was bleeding. It was awful. And this little kid who owned that pig was maybe 8, and he was crying. Oh. Pigs are fighting and no one's doing anything. And they're on there. And Dr. Wilhelm's the judge. Okay. They're on their back legs, standing up, facing each other, trying, fighting each other. No one's doing anything. So I got between them and pushed them apart. And everyone said I shouldn't have done that. I could have gotten bitten, but I didn't. And then for some reason, my pig was disqualified. And so I got him back out into his pen. Okay, now we're okay. So afterwards, Dr. Wilhelm came up to me and he said, well, let's June, you might not have had the best pig, but you have the best fighter pig. Okay. So now I have graduated from nursing school and I'm still working at the University Hospital, just, for the summer. And I'm walking down the private.
OU?
Well, I'm sorry, what?
Which university hospital? Is it OU?
Uh-huh.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, in Oklahoma City, right. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm walking down the private corridor, where all the private patients were. And Dr. Wilhelm came out. And I go, oh my gosh, Dr. Wilhelm. And he said, well, Lois June, how's your fighter pig? And I thought, I am now so much more learned and different, and everything is just awesome. And he still knew me, so it wasn't like I had changed at all. So that was funny. Yeah. So that's my story about Dr. Wilhelm.
That's pretty great.
I know. Isn't that neat?
Yeah.
He's just the kindest. It's interesting that he became president of Oklahoma State, because you wouldn't think someone who is so kind and caring for other people become president. Usually those people don't. My dog's really barking. I'm sorry.
You're good.
He didn't bark at all the other day. He's outdoors, so I don't know when he sees. Anyway, so now I'm a senior, and I was going to go to Amarillo, Texas, to a 3-year diploma school of nursing, because that's when everybody did. And it just, luckily, my brother was at OU, and he comes home and he said, they just started a BSN program in nursing. I go, oh, okay, I'll do that, And I didn't even know that you could do that until he came home, And this would have been in the fall of 1955. Yeah. And it was I was in their second class. You can believe that. Okay. And there were maybe only 10, 12 of us in that class. Mm-hmm. And the other thing, I need to say, my father really believed in education, and he was valedictorian of his class. Yeah. My brother was, and I was, yay. So I had good grades. Okay. But not as much as my brother. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. So, Toby, I have no idea. Anyway, so I go down, and during my senior year, Ada Hawkins, who was the director of nursing, came to our class and said, the government is giving money to colleges because we need to have nurses with master's degree. Oh, okay. Well, I can do that, So I applied, and I was accepted then at the University of Colorado. And I was in their second class of an MSN program, a Master of Science in Nursing. And so then after I finished that, everyone wanted us, because there was less than 1% of nurses at that point who had a master's degree in nursing. And now, it's the thing, it's totally different, but this is back in the dark ages. Yeah. I was hired by the University of Wisconsin, and the director of nursing there was Helen Bunge, who was the first editor of nursing research and the first one to be acknowledged as an outstanding scientific nurse by the American Nurses Association. So I really lucked out again. It was an awesome place for me to be. And I learned a lot, and I was there maybe 5 years, and then I got married and then followed Henry. Okay. So that's what happened. But back to college, oh my gosh. They did some dumb things. and it would not be allowed today. Everybody, well, this was okay. We all had to take physical education, and we had to be able to swim in order to graduate. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. I know. Okay. So that was the one thing I made straight A's in, though, is physical education. We took this tumbling class. Oh my gosh, I can't tumble for anything. But I would be down at the bottom of the stack of people holding up all these people. And she was so impressed with it. And then I did this thing with Indian wrestling where you bring your leg up. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, well, we challenged all the other phys ed classes and I won. Good legs, good strong legs. Okay. Anyway, every year we had to line up nude. And it was awful. You know, you'd stand around thinking, oh my gosh, there's probably a camera. And these phys ed teachers would look at our posture and our body structure. Well, why couldn't have they done that with a t-shirt on at least?
Yeah.
It was weird. Okay, so that always bothered me. And the other one was they had this Miss OU contest. And supposedly every woman in the University of Oklahoma was part of that system of becoming Miss OU. Well, I knew I would never become Miss OU, but there was no excuse. And so we would go down, and here would be these fraternity guys. We'd walk in front of them, and they'd ask us questions. Oh my gosh. And then, of course, I was eliminated immediately. It was horrible. And every house had to go through that. There's no way they would do that today, I don't think. And supposedly they had some panty raids, but it never happened that I knew about. You know? So anyway, I think about that, how, you know, it's very different. We also had to be in our room studying at a certain time. And if we weren't in our rooms, then we got a demerit. And then you had to serve time to get out of that demerit, you know, and guys didn't have any of that. They could do whatever they wanted. Hello.
Why do you think that was?
Well, they were protecting us. And also, and we could not leave and stay all night anyplace else unless our parents had written an excuse for us to stay there. So we were really guarded, you know, like what was going to happen? I don't know. They surely don't do any of that now. Do they even have hours now?
No.
Well, I would not think so.
Yeah.
I know. I know. Well, see, even then I thought, this isn't fair. You know? Yeah. So wait, is there anything before we go on about hooker?
Yeah.
Was a really good place to grow up.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you heard that from Carol Voiles. Yeah. And the school was really good, interestingly.
Yeah.
And as small as it was, and I had a really good science teacher. So when I took chemistry in high school, and I go down to OU, and it was almost a repeat of what I had in high school. And I made it easiest A I've ever made. And some of my friends were struggling like mad. And I go, well, what did you do in high school? You know? Yeah. So that was nice.
Yeah. How big was Hooker?
Oh, 1,000, 200, 300, you know, in town. But a lot of farm kids. We rode a bus a good half hour, you know, every day. They'd pick me up or pick my family up. Yeah.
How far away did you live from town?
10 miles.
Okay. Yeah. And what year did you get electricity? Or do you remember?
It probably was when I was in the 4th grade, whatever year that would be.
Yeah.
4th, 5th grade, the REA came through. I remember the pole going up. That was great. Oh, but wait. We had electricity before because we had our own Delco energizing thing that was down in the basement. But of course, it wasn't as strong as the REA when the pole. And we had the people in our neighborhood, of course, their neighborhood was miles apart. They went together and put in our own phone line so we could have a phone.
Yeah.
So Daddy was in charge of that, I know. And they put the tower, the poles in and the wires and everything. Yeah. And our phone number was two longs and two shorts.
Did you ever eavesdrop on anyone?
Well, I didn't care that, but everybody else did. Oh my gosh. And my brother came home from college and he was in love and he wanted to talk to his girlfriend, and he would go to Hooker and get on a payphone because he didn't want everyone to listen, And Hattie Hamlin was the one who listened all the time. And one time Daddy was on the phone and he was talking and she comes running to get on the phone and she was panting. And he said, Hattie? And she said, yeah, Sammy. And he said, just put the receiver up, because it's one of those that goes up and down. Just put that up. So then I can hear and you can hear. Okay, Sammy. And so she put it up. And then he could hear what was going on because before he could hear her breath and he couldn't hear the other person talking.
Oh my word.
I know. So nothing was private on the phone. Yeah. And that would have been when I graduated. I think my parents got their own individual number, and it was only a 2-party line when I was in college.
Yeah.
But back then when you called long distance, you would go from one operator to another operator to another operator to another operator, and then you'd be connected. Yeah. And it'd get really expensive. Mm-hmm. So when I was in school, I never called home when I was in college. Well, no, that was too expensive. And it was. And when you think about what we have now, it's amazing. Yeah. One time I was in the dorm and I get this call and no one had their own phones in their room or anything. Oh my gosh, no. In fact, they had a rule you could only have 2 or 3 electrical things plugged in at any given time. Oh my gosh, I know. And so I had this phone. So I go down the hall where the phone was. And this guy was talking to me and he wanted to take me out, but I couldn't figure out who he was. And I kept saying things to figure out that he would say his name, and he never did. And I said, well, I don't know who this is. And the person said, well, who does it sound like? And I said, well, it sounds like my daddy. And it was. But I thought, how terrible if I said it was my daddy and it wasn't. So he loved to play little tricks on me like that. And he had come down to the university and he was calling me and he took me out to eat. But he thought that was great fun. Daddy was very good looking, a very nice looking man. And when I was in the sorority and he came down to visit, all the girls were falling in love with him. They just thought he was wonderful.
That's funny.
I know. Yeah. Okay.
So how did you meet your husband?
How did I meet him? Well, so I'm now after I graduated, while I was in school at Colorado, I get a call from Dean Bungie, who again is the dean of nursing at the University of Wisconsin. And so I went for an interview and they hired me. And I just never thought anybody wouldn't want me. Hello, of course I'll get hired, and I was. And it was really, really a good situation. I learned a lot, and it was a larger school, and I had good supervisors who helped me learn, and we did all kinds of innovative things. That was such a wonderful experience for me. So I met my husband there, and it was at a grad school dance, and we met, and we dated for maybe 2 years, while he was in grad school, and then we got married, and then he got a job with Upjohn Company, which is now part of Pfizer. Okay. And we moved to Kalamazoo, Michigan. Mm-hmm. And we were in Michigan, oh gosh, 40 some years, more that I've lived there longer than any other place. All of our daughters were born in Michigan, 3 daughters, and they all went to the University of Michigan. So I'm a great fan. My husband used to talk about how many years he paid for tuition at the University of Michigan. And they actually redid the stadium and saved the seats and sold them. And I bought him 2 seats, which I still have from the University of Michigan football stadium. And he always felt that all of his money went to that stadium. He just knew that the new seats were from him. So he was funny. Yeah. So, yeah, we were in Michigan a long time, had a lot of good friends there.
Yeah. How did you work as a nurse the whole time that you were?
Always. But I worked as a regular staff nurse at the University of Oklahoma after I graduated. And then I went to grad school. And then I worked at Wisconsin. I was teaching, so we would take our students on the unit. Do you know there are several ways to become a nurse and to become a registered nurse? Probably not. Well, back then it was a 3-year hospital program, diploma program, or a BSN. Then they started the community college programs. So that's an associate degree in nursing. But all of those, you take the same test to become a registered nurse by the state. So then, of course, I was a registered nurse in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And I would have 7 or 8 students that I'd be responsible for and their care that they were given. Mm-hmm. So, it was like a supervisor. You better make sure that your students did what they were supposed to do. We didn't kill anybody. So I worked in the hospitals all the time. Okay. Yeah. Then when we went to Wisconsin, I worked in the hospital that summer before I worked in the faculty of this diploma school. And that hospital was so backward. They did not recognize a degree, even a bachelor's degree, let alone a master's. They only recognized hours of time nurses gave to their hospital. Huh. So I had not worked there at all. Mm-hmm. So some of my students who worked as aides were making more than I did.
That's not fair.
Oh, isn't that weird?
Yeah.
Well, they changed that, I'm sure, But yeah, that was bad. Okay. So yes, I have always worked in hospitals. I've mostly worked with students and their learning and making sure that they were learning well as we were taking care of the patients safely and did the right thing for patients. I think nursing is one of those things. It's interesting. I have a friend who's a nurse, and we still talk about, I'm a nurse. Her husband is a chemist, and he never says he's a chemist anymore. He was a chemist. Isn't that interesting? We're always nurses. Yeah. I still say I'm a nurse. Yeah. Anyway. So I was talking about nursing. Okay. So then I taught at Nazareth College. I was the first person hired. Oh, back at Wisconsin, I became head of the beginning nursing course after I was there maybe 2 years. Yeah. And, we would have 50 to 75 students per class.
Oh, wow.
So, and we must have had, 50 faculty members in the nursing program. It was really an up and coming, very positive thing. Yeah. So I learned a lot. So here I am now, kind of in charge and feeling really good. But I did a good job. Come on, And then when we went to Michigan, I helped set up their first BSN program. And much like Wisconsin, because Wisconsin was so good.
Yeah.
And our program was really good. And all of our students always passed their state boards, which was good, really high. And then there was a downward turn of small colleges. And so they decided to close the school. And they did it over Easter, which was a horrible time to do it because here these students were not there. So I called every one of my students to let them know that the school was closing, and I was the only faculty member who did that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so then they were going to not let or finish the students that I had just completed their course. They were going to say, you have to find another program. Well, nursing's weird. I'm sure a lot of programs are that way. They all have their individual requirements, and it has to be so many credit hours. And so if you had 4 credit hours and the school required 5, then they wouldn't accept it. I mean, it's really dumb things. So I went to bat for my students and said, we need to help finish them.
Yeah.
And the nursing faculty twice voted it down, and I would not accept that. And I kept coming back. And finally, another faculty member joined me, and we laid out how these students could finish. So because of me, there were 12 students that finished their curriculum that would not have. They still get in contact with me. They love me. I know. And so then after that, I also did consulting work. And maybe that's what Patty McDonald was saying. I have never been in charge of a huge program. I was asked to be director of nursing at Kalamazoo Valley Community College.
Mm-hmm.
But I had 3 young children, and I knew being a director of a nursing program takes a lot of time. And I knew children take a lot of time, so I chose not to do it.
Yeah.
And that was okay, but I did consult there and help set up their program. And then there was a program down near the Indiana border, Glen Oaks Community College, that was about to lose their accreditation. And I went down and helped them. Yeah. And, it was just a matter of vocabulary. They were using the wrong words, but they were doing a good job. Words are important. Yeah. So I helped them through that. Yeah. So, a lot of nursing experience. Yeah. I always was with patients, though. Oh my gosh, patients love me, and I love patients, and the students love me. I was very good at affirming students that they could do it.
Yeah.
And
that's
some
really
faculty members, they called them, they eat their young, and they were ugly to them, No, I wasn't that way. I was very supportive and encouraging and helped them learn. I love teaching. I still hear. I heard from one of my students yesterday. So, yeah. So, nice. Who's now? She's a nurse practitioner. And one of my students has her PhD. So, they've gone beyond me. It's nice. It's very nice. Yeah.
How has the profession of nursing changed over the years?
I don't think there's as much hands-on as we used to do because there's so much technology and things that they have to know, that they just weren't there, when I was a student and when I was caring for patients. So, nurses have a lot of responsibility just with, even the IV system, starting an intravenous is now all electronic. We used to just hang and let it drip, and count the numbers. And now it's all done electronically and it counts it for you and everything. It's very different, except that nursing has continued to be one of the most respected professions of all the professions. And I don't know if you've ever noticed when they list which profession is the most valuable to you or do you trust the most? It's nursing.
Yeah.
Doctors and lawyers are down at the bottom.
That's
Yeah.
fun. Yeah.
Well, and I think the other thing about nursing is that we all say in nursing, and when we teach it, the patient and the patient's needs, that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
But we're hired by the hospital,
Mhm.
and we're directed by the doctor, the physician. So there are 3 different groups that we're trying to meet their needs. And, I'm not sure there's another profession that has 3 groups overlooking them like nursing does.
Yeah.
It's interesting. There probably is. I just don't know about it,
Yeah.
Yeah. And to juggle meeting the patient's needs, and more than once,
Yeah.
I have gone against a physician saying, trying to do it nicely,
Yeah.
And usually I was good at that, but every now and then I'd hit problems, But I usually knew what I was doing, and I always stood up for the patient. And I always stood up for this student nurses, and they knew that I would. Yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned that you're a big women's rights advocate. Did you have, how did that play out in your career?
Well, I couldn't have gone to med school. You know what? I couldn't have gone to engineering school either.
Yeah.
I think when I went into the University of Oklahoma, women were finally we had nursing, but there were so few of us. Mm-hmm. And they were in business school, but only for managing other secretaries and things like that.
Yeah.
And there was home ec, and then there was teaching. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Yeah.
Isn't that sad?
Yeah.
I know.
Not very many options.
No. But in nursing, it was a tough curriculum. And we had always the best students. I mean, they were farm girls like myself, very dedicated and wanting to learn. And they talk about now that student nurses don't have that same drive, but I'm not sure that's true. So that was one of the first things. And then we didn't have that many choices. Okay. Yeah. And now, when I was teaching at Nazareth College, and that was in Kalamazoo, and they started my salary at the same thing I was getting at the University of Wisconsin when I left there. Mm-hmm. And I'd been there maybe a year, and I got a call from the president of the little college saying that I was making more money than any of the other nursing faculty, and that wasn't fair. And because I was married, I really didn't need the money, so they were lowering my salary.
That's bizarre.
And I didn't even have a choice. I just sat there. This is what's happening, and it did. Now they wouldn't dare do that today.
Yeah.
So that affected me a lot, And when I was for that matter, at the University of Wisconsin, I was getting raises every year. And then Henry and I got married, and I didn't get a raise that year. Now, what? So I went to the dean, and I really respected her. And I said, I don't understand why I didn't get a raise this year. And she said, well, it's because you're married. And married faculty don't have the stability and the longevity here that unmarried faculty do, which was true. But that doesn't mean I shouldn't have gotten a raise. So I didn't, but she said she would make it up the next year. Well, the next year came around, and Henry had finished his PhD program, and we left. So she was right. I wasn't as a stable faculty member, but
Yeah.
that shouldn't have mattered in my pay scale.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's really
And I
sad.
have 3 daughters,
Mhm.
and I'm very, strong about women and women's rights, and women can do more, so yeah.
Yeah.
And they all, go ahead.
What do your daughters do?
My oldest daughter has a PhD and she's teaching at Purdue.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And her husband is also there. They have 1 child, Eads, who's now a senior. Oh my gosh. And this is a weird year to be a senior with all the virus stuff going on. That was Shara. Mara has master's in museum studies and archaeology.
Oh, that's cool.
I know. And she finished at Harvard in their museum studies program and worked at the Kennedy Center for a while. And then she got married, and now they're out in Seattle area. And Seattle, and did I say she worked at the Kennedy Museum? Okay. She helped get the, I don't know what you call it, the moving program of Jackie Kennedy's dresses at all the museums. Mara helped with that. I know.
Oh,
Isn't that fun?
cool.
Yeah. So then they get out to Seattle and they have very few museums. I mean, Boston is just overflowing with museums,
Yeah.
So she has not been able to work in that capacity. But she's always loved jewelry. And so she has worked in different jewelry stores and things like that. But she's fine. And her husband is a techie person. And, they had some openings. I thought, well, I'll read up on them and see what they are. It's kind of like medical terminology to you. I didn't understand the thing that job meant. So I was out to lunch. Anyway. And then Chandra, my youngest, got 2 masters, one in botany and one in teaching. And so she's teaching now out in Seattle. And she has science courses.
Yeah.
She teaches. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Henry used to say that how many years he paid tuition. Well, it was a lot because these girls were always going. But, they were good students, and that's what counts. And that's what they wanted to do. Yeah. So Henry, by the way, died of Alzheimer's maybe 6 years ago. Yeah. And I was just reading an article about different kinds of Alzheimer's, and his onset was early, like 45, and he changed. Oh, wow. And they were saying that there's a group that have, dementia and problems, personality changes, and they now even have a different name for it than regular Alzheimer's because the onset is so early.
Yeah. Oh, but
I didn't know at the time. Looking back, I could see, oh my gosh. But at the time, I was getting angry at him because he was different. And I would say to him, why don't we do this? Well, he kind of withdrew.
Yeah.
And he became very placid. So it was hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, at 45, he started changing. And so he took a test, the psychology test they give to, anybody. And he scored in the 100th percentile in math and 0 on short-term memory.
Oh,
I know. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Part of the brain that was involved. Yeah. He also was from a farm from the state of Washington.
Yeah.
Wheat farm. And my parents were wheat farmers, although we were much more diversified. Their wheat was much more predictable, so they could live on wheat alone. There's no way my parents could have lived on wheat alone. We had to have chickens and cows and horses and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you have any other stories that you'd like to tell me before we end our time today?
How long have we been talking? How long have
Yeah. It's gone quickly.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm sure I could think of more women's issues, things that I get really uptight about. And I'm really pleased to see Biden choosing more women. I think that's very good. I'm really glad to see more women serving as senators and representatives and in high power positions. I think that glass ceiling is still there.
Yeah.
And I can get really uptight about some things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know why I'm stronger than some women I know. And I don't know why I feel stronger than other women, like, well, why aren't you there? I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think women are, what's just because men wear pants, that doesn't mean they're any smarter, In fact, med students now and veterinary schools have more women than men now. And it's because we have always been better students, right? In grade school, who were the better students? Women, right? And so now we're beating men at their own game. Oh my gosh, and they don't know what to do. What? Why do we have so many women? Well, because we're meeting the standards that you established and you didn't know that we were better than you. But we are. So I'm, I don't let men get away with that. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
But it's true. It's true.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for talking with me today. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Well, I hope it works out for Joella Hunley and her brother. Did you try to find him? Is he still I think he still lives in Stillwater.
Okay. Yeah. I'll look into that more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you will love Florence Flanagan. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I'm excited.
Florence Flanagan, when Hooker has their reunions, will change clothes 4 times because she doesn't want her students to see her looking the same. I mean, and she looks good. She's fun. She does very well. Yeah. I know. Yeah. And Joella, I think, is the one that was in the sod house. I think they grew up near Sayre. And she said her brother has a book that he probably would share with you about those early days. So he probably would really be a winner for you. Yeah,
that would be cool.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Oh, I just read in Oklahoma Today, their little magazine. Do you get that? Do you see?
I think my parents might. Yeah.
Well, because the Panhandle was no man's land, right?
Yeah.
And south of Liberal, Kansas, near Tyrone, Oklahoma, they had this beer city, and it was because there was no laws and everything. And they had prostitution and gambling and all kinds of things right there, which would be 20 miles from Hooker.
Yeah.
I had no idea all of that was going on. They go, wow, can you believe that?
Yeah.
And I just had no idea. And so something should happen.
Do you know where like Guyman and Balco are?
Sure.
Yeah, my mom is from Guyman and my dad's from Balco. So.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
We played Balco and basketball all the time.
Oh,
sure.
Yeah.
And what was your last name?
My last name?
What was your
my maiden name is Ringer.
Mother?
Yeah. So
R-I-N-G-E-R.
Yeah. So
I don't know
Karen, my grandparents were farmers out in Balco. And then my mom's parents, they lived in Beaver for the longest time. And in August, they just moved to Stillwater because my grandfather has Alzheimer's. So.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Oh, I can identify. And what was their name?
Purcell.
What was
Purcell.
Oh.
Yeah.
There were Purcells at Hooker. I wonder if they were related.
Yeah.
Probably.
Do you know?
Forrest Purcell.
That doesn't sound familiar. Do you know the Hoffabers?
Well, Forrest was the father's name. And then Larry Purcell was about my age.
Okay. I'd have to ask my grandmother to see if she knows. But that would be interesting.
Well, I know, because everybody knows everybody out there, you know. And oh yeah, you know.
Yeah.
And when my sister dated a guy from, oh gosh, it was north and west of Guyman, Yarborough.
Okay.
And yeah. And my grandfather talked about their family, and it was a good family. The other family, you know, they all know each other, you know, and it's, everybody in Hooker used to know everybody, you know. Of course, now I don't, because of the packing plant. So people are very different there. But then I've read that every generation there's a change.
Mm-hmm.
So when my grandparents came, it was farming.
Yeah.
And my father was a farmer, but then gas came in while I was a student.
Yeah.
And they built all kinds of gas plants around, right?
Yeah.
So that was what happened. And now the next generation is, we see the packing plants. And there's a lot of Chicano people who have moved in. Hooker now has over 50% Chicano students.
Yeah.
But for some reason, and this sounds terrible, but they say the stronger family type people have moved to Hooker that are Chicano, and the others stayed in Guyman. So they still have a decent school and good students, while Guyman is having a lot of problems with, you know, gangs and crimes and things. And Guyman was the one who wanted Seaboard, so pig people, to come in. And only Guyman voted on it. They didn't allow anybody else in the county to vote.
Yeah.
And so, but, you know, they put in these pig farms, and I don't know if you've been around a pig farm, but they smell horrible. Oh my gosh. And one of my mother's best friends, they put all these pigs right behind her house.
Oh.
And she would have to go outside with a gas mask because it was so bad. And I thought that it wouldn't last long because they're using up our water, but they're still there. So I don't know.
Yeah.
So, but there's a difference. It changes again, you know, and it'll change again. So it's, you know, very philosophical, but
very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I should probably let you go.
My grandfather homesteaded on our farm.
Yeah.
And he came from Missouri, and so did Grandma, and they were both Swiss.
Oh, okay.
He came over from Switzerland when he was 8 or 9, and Grandma's parents came. So she was born in the United States, but he met her, and then they got married and had Aunt Ruby, and then they moved out. They homesteaded and moved out to the farm. And that's where my father was born. And then my brother and sister were born there. And we sold it because none of us, you know, my brother's a physician. He's not going to go back there. And I'm not going to manage a farm, you know. So it was sad. Yeah. But a neighbor bought it who understood the Panhandle, which is different than downstate Oklahoma, for Pete's sake, right? Yeah. Stillwater is quite different than Guyman. Yeah. So, things change. That's for sure. Yeah.
Well, I should probably let you go, but it was wonderful talking to you. I had a good time.
And now I can have a copy of this for my children. Is that right?
Yeah. And I can try and send you a video too, but I'll definitely send you the transcript. So
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Thank you.
Awesome.
Well, good luck. Let me know how some of these other people work out that I've sent your way. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.